In our first story, Behind Mansion Walls.
Hey.
She was smart, she was perky, she was unintimidated.
Murder darkens the doorway of a hallowed family name.
Americans are just obsessed with the goings-on of the Kennedy family.
And later,
he was invited to all the right parties. He dated good-looking women.
the world of a high-flying surgeon comes crashing down.
One got the impression that there was a tremendous amount beneath the surface.
I'm Christopher Mason. Gazing down from their penthouses and private jets, the rich can sometimes fool themselves into believing they're untouchable, a law unto themselves. Cloaked in the prestige of wealth, they may even think they can get away with murder. Why bother playing by the rules when you're above suspicion?
It's the day before Halloween, 1975. In Belhaven, Connecticut, an annual tradition is underway.
Mischief night. The night when kids would go out and ring doorbells.
You know, doing all kinds of Halloween-like pranks.
Kids would throw eggs at houses.
Throw toilet paper over trees.
The general neighborhood was running around committing mischief.
So far, it's harmless fun. But tonight, Belhaven will lose its innocence as mischief becomes murder.
She was beaten to death with a golf club. 14 or 15 blows to the head.
Made your first million? That's nice. Make another 10, and a slice of Greenwich, Connecticut could be yours.
Overall, it's big bucks. Big, big bucks. Wall Street types, bankers, old money, new money.
Oil barons, hedge fund managers, stars of the Fortune 500. Since the 1920s, the captains of America's industry have been weighing anchor here.
It has become the home of the rich and the famous. Actors and singers and, celebrities.
Greenwich's most exclusive enclave is Belhaven. Guarded by a gatehouse, patrolled by round-the-clock security, it lulls its ultra-rich residents into a sense of safety, making them feel protected from the depravity of the world outside.
It was considered the safest place that a person could live, where you could let your children run free in the streets, where you probably don't even know where the keys to your house are.
It seems the perfect place to raise a vivacious 15-year-old like Martha Moxley. She moves to Belhaven with her parents in 1974. Her father heads the New York office of one of America's Big 8 accounting firms. They settle in a large English-style mansion with formal gardens stretching for 3 acres.
She was smart, she was perky, she was unintimidated. She just sounded like the kind of kid every parent would want his son to have as a girlfriend.
There's no way you can get this. No way.
Martha begins spending time at the neighbor's house.
Yes.
But these are no ordinary boys next door.
This is the one I won last year.
They're brothers with a name inscribed on America's history.
The company that the boys' grandfather founded was, I think, the largest private company in America after Ford.
The boy's grandfather is George Skakel. In the heady days of the industrial boom, this former railway clerk realizes there is one commodity America can't get enough of: coal. The quicker he can supply it, the richer he'll be.
Mr. Skakel, the eldest, kind of cornered the coke market in the late 1930s, and of course, he made an awful lot of money. The corporation was finally sold, and it was reportedly at that time the largest sale of a privately held corporation in American financial history.
George has made the Skakels rich, But it's his daughter Ethel who will make them famous.
Americans are just obsessed, if not the world, are obsessed with the goings-on of the Kennedy family.
In 1950, Ethel Skakel marries Robert F. Kennedy, brother of JFK. Suddenly, the Skakels are the closest thing to American royalty.
Ethel Kennedy, who was married to Bobby Kennedy, was a Skakel. In essence, the Kennedys and the Skakels were cousins.
With famous relatives, bulging trust funds, and five-star skiing vacations, 17-year-old Tommy and 15-year-old Michael have been favored by fortune in every way, except one.
The mother had died when they were young, and the father was an alcoholic. So you had a household with absolutely no discipline. Michael and Tommy were not friends at all. In some ways, they were enemies, rivals, certainly.
It's not fair!
On the eve of Halloween in 1975, Martha plays pranks with her friends, then hooks up with the Skakel brothers in their father's car.
What are you even doing?
She leaves about 9:30 to make her curfew. Martha's home is 150 yards away. At any moment, her mom expects her to walk through the door.
Mrs. Moxley waited up, and she never came home. The next morning, one of Martha's friends had decided she was going to go look for her.
She found Martha lying underneath a tall pine tree. Her pants and panties had been pulled down below knee level.
And her head had been bludgeoned so much that her blonde hair looked red.
Martha's body is on the outskirts of her family's estate, just 50 yards from her home. In shocked Belhaven, the search for answers begins. But if there's one thing residents think they already know, it's that horror like this could not be homegrown.
For a murder to occur in Belhaven was unthinkable. And immediately people thought it must be some sort of outsider.
And here's an outsider served up on a platter. On the night of the murder, a new tutor had moved into the Skakel mansion, 23-year-old Kenneth Littleton.
Ken had been retained by the Skakel family to tutor some of the kids who were having some trouble in school, and to come and stay with the family because the father had gone off on a hunting trip. Ken's first night ever in the house was that night.
And on that first night, Martha Moxley is brutally murdered. Coincidence? Cops don't think so. And what they discover next only strengthens their suspicions.
In investigating the crime scene, the officers discovered a name brand golf club. It was discovered that a matching set, minus this particular club, was found in a particular household during the investigation. And that household was the Skakel home.
Has the Skakel family ushered a killer into Belhaven?
If you're lucky enough to live among the mansions of Greenwich, Connecticut, you'd be accustomed to seeing your neighbors' names in the headlines, names like Kennedy and Rockefeller. But in 1975, a name most haven't heard is splashed across the front pages.
Martha was your average 15-year-old teenager who had so much ahead of her in life.
Until October 31st, when Martha Moxley is found beaten to death with a golf club in Greenwich's wealthiest enclave.
It was done with such force that the golf club had actually come apart in the course of the swinging of the club against her.
Almost as shocking as the murder is the origin of the murder weapon.
The source of the murder weapon was apparently the Skakel property.
The Skakels are rich cousins of the Kennedys. In the minds of some, That places them above suspicion. But not everyone in the Skakel mansion that night was a Skakel.
Could it have been Kenneth Littleton, who was the person who had been brought in by the Skakel family to watch the children that night?
Live-in tutor Kenneth Littleton denies any involvement, saying he spent the night watching TV in his room. Investigators can't find any proof he's lying.
No information was developed that would result in a arrest warrant that would be signed by any prosecutor worth his salt.
Investigators theorize that Belhaven's security could have been breached by an outsider.
As a matter of fact, a major thruway, Route 95, which is the major thruway between New York and Boston, passes along one side of Belhaven. Someone could have come from 95.
They were looking at a hitchhiker, perhaps, who came off the turnpike who could have done this.
Desperate for a lead, police also knock on doors in the affluent community.
They canvassed the neighborhood. Was there any sexual predators living in the near neighborhood? Were there people with drug problems living in the neighborhood that could be violent?
Then, new information shifts the focus of the investigation. The source? A voice from the grave.
Dear Diary, I really have to stop going over to the Skakels.
Martha's diary started to allow us to see what was going on in her life at that time.
Michael jumps to conclusions. Just because I talk to Tommy doesn't mean I like him.
And it revealed that she had relationships with both Thomas and Michael Skakel.
17-year-old Tommy Skakel and 15-year-old Michael are known to be rivals. Could they have been competing for Martha's affection? Police retrace Martha's final movements. On the night she died, she hung out with the Skakel boys in their father's Lincoln Continental.
Hey.
Hey.
How you guys doing?
Step into the lust swim.
Don't mind if we do.
A number of kids gathered in the Lincoln to listen to a cassette deck, listen to rock and roll music.
Without parental supervision, the Skakel brothers are used to doing as they like. But Martha's promised her mom she won't be out late.
It was time to go home. Michael had exited the car. Tommy and Martha exited the car. They were observed engaging in innocent-sounding horseplay, a little shoving or pushing or something like that.
And then Martha went home at about 9:30.
That was the last anybody saw of Martha alive.
Tommy says he then goes home and up to the room of his tutor, Ken Littleton.
Right around the time of the murder, they were both watching a TV show, the initial telecast of The French Connection.
And Littleton said Tommy couldn't have done it because he's there with me watching this thing. But they alibied each other. That Tommy's statement really alibied Littleton.
What about 15-year-old Michael Skakel? When questioned, he says he last saw Martha outside the Skakel house as he was leaving to watch TV at a cousin's home.
Michael claimed that he had left the Skakel house about 9:15 and driven to his cousin's. He told them that he came back at about 11 o'clock and went right to bed.
After watching TV for a while, Tommy also retires to his room. With both Skakel boys apparently tucked peacefully into bed, police turn their spotlight back on the tutor. And what he does a year after Martha's murder won't do his claims of innocence any favors.
Mr. Littleton had some troubles, and he was arrested for unrelated crimes. But certainly that criminal involvement kept him under the watchful eye and the thoughts of investigators as being a potential suspect.
But proof continues to elude investigators. If the crime occurred today, it might have been solved by DNA. But this is 1975.
There was no such thing as DNA.
This is before DNA work was possible.
In another blow to the investigation, no search warrant is ever served to the Skakel home, leading some to speculate that police are intimidated by this influential family.
They failed to conduct a formal search of the Skakel house, and they failed to interview separately all of the Skakel family.
When a pair of blue jeans and white sneakers are found discarded near the crime scene, investigators believe there might be a breakthrough. But this possibly vital evidence goes missing.
Those samples, blue jeans and sneakers, were sent to the FBI, and according to the FBI, were at some point returned to the Greenwich Police Department, and we don't know what happened to those. They disappeared either at the Greenwich Police Department or at the FBI.
For former State's Attorney Jonathan Benedict, it's a major blow to the investigation.
It was very disconcerting. Even with 1975 technology, we could have done blood grouping, ABO blood grouping, which could have been quite helpful.
By 1977, the Martha Moxley murder investigation has ground to a halt.
This case, as time went by, was starting to get colder and colder and colder.
While Martha Moxley lies in her Greenwich grave, the suspects in her murder roam free. Until sensational new testimony comes to light from a source no one is expecting.
Martha likes me. I'll go get a kiss from Martha.
In 1975, among the lavish mansions of Belhaven, Connecticut, 15-year-old Martha Moxley is brutally murdered with a golf club. For over 20 years, the crime remains unsolved.
The concern by those who really wanted it solved was that it would be forgotten, because that happens all over this country every day.
Since the murder, one of the suspects has been acting strangely. Martha's former neighbor, Michael Skakel.
Michael was reportedly a very troubled young fellow. We know he was doing a lot of drugs. He was having difficulties drinking a lot.
Michael has spent the last 20 years doing odd jobs for his cousins, the Kennedys, in between psychiatric sessions and stints in rehab.
Following the murder, he was having a very difficult time dealing with something. He tried twice to leap out of the car that he'd been riding in and jump off of Triborough Bridge. So clearly he was having a lot of trouble.
What's eating Michael Skakel up inside? Is it his own guilt? Or is it the burden of hiding someone else's?
So when you're investigating a cold case, it's kind of like going fishing. Sometimes you have to sit and wait and wait and wait until you get the right bite on the lure.
In the early 90s, Michael starts talking. He's now in his mid-30s and has hired a ghostwriter to write his memoirs.
Michael had engaged in an effort to write a biography focused on growing up as a cousin of Kennedy's and as a troubled teenager.
The ghostwriter also tapes an interview with Michael about the night of the Moxley murder. That tape falls into the hands of former Deputy Chief State's Attorney Christopher Morano. He's stunned by how much the story differs from Michael's initial account.
In his first story, he said he went to North Greenwich. He had an alibi. That he was watching television at his cousin's house, and that he came home and he went to bed.
But in the interview with his ghostwriter, Michael reveals something he never told investigators.
I remember part of me just wanted to go to sleep. Another part of me got horny.
The new story from Michael showed that he had come home from North Greenwich, that he did not go straight to bed, that in fact he went out and he was looking for Martha and to try and get a kiss from her.
Martha likes me. I'll go get a kiss from Martha.
He climbed a tree on the Moxley property, trying to be able to call at her window or look into her window.
I don't know. I guess I'm a little out of my mind because I was drunk and high.
He was intoxicated and high, and he briefly masturbated.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, I hope God nobody saw me jerking off.
What has happened in the past 20 years that has made Michael change his story? Investigators think they know.
There had been advances in DNA technology.
In the early 90s, newly developed DNA analysis is cracking even the coldest of cases.
In many cold cases, the linchpin is some DNA evidence that connects the person to the crime.
So when Michael claims to have masturbated in a tree near the crime scene, prosecutors believe he's actually laying the groundwork for his defense.
He was trying to explain why his DNA, his intimate body fluids, could either show up at the crime scene or upon the victim's body.
Then, new witnesses come forward. People who went to school and rehab with Michael and heard him say something chilling.
One of which related that Michael went through, I think I did it, I'm not too sure what I did. I probably did it, no, I did do it. He gave up more detail about having beaten Martha with a golf club and subsequent to the homicide, masturbating on her body.
Michael might have watched enough cop shows to know about DNA, but what he doesn't know is that in this case, there isn't any.
There really was essentially no forensic evidence.
All the DNA that might have been at the Moxley murder scene has deteriorated. By trying to create excuses, all Michael has done is incriminate himself.
This case was developed a lot by the web that was woven by Michael Skakel to deflect attention. But unfortunately, that web ensnared him.
In 2002, 27 years after Martha was killed, Michael Skakel stands trial for her murder.
This particular case was of great interest because of the Kennedy connection. But like any whodunit, the public became very, very interested in the case and whether or not the state could prove it.
The catch was, of course, it was 27 years old, and they didn't know what kind of a reaction a jury would take to a case that it took the state that long a period of time to solve.
The prosecution casts doubt on Michael's alibi. They have no hard evidence to place him at the crime scene, but they do have that revealing testimony recorded by his ghostwriter.
He changed his story as to what he had done. You add to that, the murder weapon came from his house. He had access to the murder weapon. The state was able to pierce his alibi, and you add to the fact that on the night of the murder, he was out looking for the victim at about the time she was murdered with the intent of getting a kiss from her. Add all those things together, and the case, from the prosecution's point of view, seemed like we could get a conviction, and it would be pretty strong.
Prosecutors speculate the murder is triggered when Michael's older brother Tommy begins courting Martha.
Love this song.
Really?
Yeah.
There appeared to be a rivalry between Tommy and Michael for Martha's attentions and affection.
Seething with rejection and jealousy, Michael grabs a golf club. If he can't have Martha, no one will.
There was supposition that he killed Martha in a jealous fit of rage.
After deliberating for 5 days, the jury returns with a verdict. Michael Skakel, the privileged son of a once proud dynasty, is guilty of murder. His sentence, 20 years to life.
27 years after Martha Moxley was murdered, justice finally was achieved.
Even decades after the Moxley murder, questions remain. Chief among them, did anyone assist Michael in covering up the crime?
We have always felt that someone was involved in the moving of the body.
Crime scene photos clearly show that after the murder, Martha's body was dragged to a more secluded location.
We've never had a sense that there were two people involved in the murder. It was a one-person crime. That was Michael Skakel. But given the intoxication and drug use of Michael that night and the frenzied method of the attack, it always seemed to us that he would not have been capable of moving the body and hiding it all by himself. So we've always felt strongly that somebody helped. We're not too sure who.
When you get rich, you find new ways to play. You take up polo. You skipper your own luxury yacht. Or you take to the skies, where you can gaze down on all those for whom fortune has not been quite so kind.
He had everything going for him.
He was handsome. He had a lucrative profession.
He was a man who spoke multiple languages.
How about you take the controls?
Me?
He was an absolute charmer.
You're flying the plane.
Wow!
Dashing doctor and accomplished pilot Robert Birnbaum has the world at his feet and his date, Gail Katz, in the palm of his hand.
Only you, Bob.
I think Dr. Birnbaum did appear to be a good catch.
Cheers.
He was a doctor who was going to be at the top of his profession. According to many, he was brilliant.
The doctor's training to be a cosmetic surgeon. With a winning smile and a scalpel that can turn back time, he could make a mint from Manhattan's high society. But there's one woman who'll have no need of his surgical skill. His gorgeous new wife, Gail. In 1982, the couple marry.
Hi, honey.
While their Upper East Side apartment speaks of a couple on the way up,
How are you?
their glamorous lifestyle suggests they've already made it.
A good portion of his income was spent on renting planes and flying around. Sometimes he would take either Gail or Gail and other friends, maybe up to the shore in Cape Cod.
Vacationing, skiing.
They went to restaurants, they went to the theater.
Nice lifestyle, if you can get it.
They lived a privileged existence. They had a bright future.
To secure an even brighter future, Gail's in college. She hopes to emulate her husband's success.
She was a serious student. She was taking graduate courses to become a psychologist. She had many friends. All her friends loved her.
Then, on July 7th, 1985, news no one is expecting.
It was his impression that his wife went to the park to lay and get some sun.
Gail doesn't come home that Sunday. The next evening after work, Dr. Birnbaum reports her missing.
They were talking to all of her friends, anyone, to try and get information about what possibly could have happened to her.
What they'll find out is that the good doctor's wife has a wilder side.
She'd been having an affair. They had experimented with cocaine.
Hard drugs and extramarital sex. Is this why Gail never came home?
When you live on Manhattan's Upper East Side, Sundays might be spent browsing boutiques on Madison Avenue, lunching at Swifty's, or perusing an exhibition at the Met. What well-heeled residents generally don't do on a Sunday is vanish into thin air.
In 1985, Gail Katz Birnbaum, wife of a respected Manhattan physician, disappears without a trace.
All her friends liked her very much. They were all very concerned when her husband reported her missing.
Gail was last seen by her husband, Dr. Robert Birnbaum.
Do you love this guy or what?
He admits before she left the apartment they had a lover's quarrel.
Can we just talk about this like adults?
Things to talk about.
He conveyed to the police that it was his impression that his wife went to the park to lay and get some sun. It was July 7th, and to cool off from the fight that they had.
What police find out next explains why they may have been fighting. This uptown girl's been going downtown. She'd taken a Wall Street banker as her lover. And he's rumored to have a penchant for cocaine.
His thing was, listen, I wasn't proud of it. It was an 80s thing. Cocaine was prevalent. It was everywhere. Everybody did it.
In fact, America is in the grip of a crime-filled crack cocaine epidemic. Dr. Birnbaum thinks his wife may have become its latest victim.
One of the proposals that Dr. Birnbaum put forth to the police and to friends and to her family was that she possibly may have come to harm by certain people that she hung around with that were involved in narcotics.
Adding to the mystery of Gail's disappearance are the items that didn't vanish with her.
Police found her purse and her keys in the apartment. So the question is, what woman leaves behind their belongings?
To some who knew Gail's history, there's a simple answer.
Well, she had been depressed, she had been moody, she had even been suicidal. Hence the suggestion that she might have killed herself and made herself vanish forever.
Cops learn Gail had a troubled adolescence and had once attempted suicide. But if Gail has killed herself, where is her body?
People commit suicide, you find them generally in the place they commit suicide. Unless you're going to jump off a bridge.
Is Gail's body drifting in the depths of the East River? Suicide, drug crime, jealous lovers. The possibilities are stacking up. But do any of them explain Gail's disappearance?
The fact that Gail had other relationships outside of Dr. Birnbaum was something that was thoroughly investigated. It wasn't ignored. There was nothing ever to suggest that there was some sort of jealous lover situation, that one of these individuals may have been the person that did her harm.
What about Gail's supposed connections with violent drug dealers?
Did we think it was possible that she's taking the train up to Central Harlem and gets kidnapped and cut up by drug dealers? No.
And prosecutor Dan Bibb doesn't buy the suicide theory either.
She just had a pedicure, and suicides don't get pedicures. She'd recently had an intrauterine device in place. I'm not sure that somebody who's depressed and contemplating suicide is going to go to their doctor, have a birth control device put in if they're thinking that this is going to be the end.
Detectives turn their attention to her husband, the dashing surgeon Robert Birnbaum. He sticks to his story. They argued at 11 a.m. She left. He waited in the apartment until late afternoon before departing for a family gathering in New Jersey.
He tells the detectives that he's in his apartment at least until 5:30, maybe later, and then leaves immediately for the birthday party.
Investigators want to conduct a search of the doctor's apartment. But strangely, his attorney blocks it.
There never was a thorough search by law enforcement of Dr. Birnbaum's apartment to look for things such as hair, blood, or anything that may be forensically valuable.
Dr. Birnbaum said the argument was a lover's quarrel. But was it? Could it contain a clue to why Gail is gone?
I'm leaving you.
At least one of her friends said that on the day that he reported her missing was the day that she was going to tell him that she was going to leave him.
Maybe Gail has left her husband and doesn't want him to find her. But why hasn't she contacted her family?
There was no body. There was no DNA evidence. There was no forensic material from the apartment. There was no clarity even as to whether she was dead or alive.
At that time, there was a number of murders going on in the city. The cops had enough to do. They felt, at least they think that they felt they had done what they could.
The missing persons case goes cold, and the grieving Dr. Birnbaum is free to go. And go he does.
Moves to Las Vegas, of all places. Who'd have thought of it? He was invited to all the right parties. He dated good-looking women.
Here in Sin City, the doctor becomes a plastic surgeon, specializing in breasts. Business is blowing up.
Las Vegas is the place to go if you're a plastic surgeon, but it's also the place to go if you're a doctor with a shady past that you want to bury.
In Vegas, the doctor surrounds himself with strangers. He's considered above suspicion.
All of the women in Las Vegas said, how can this guy who is this great human being, well-educated, have anything to do with his wife's disappearance?
But what they don't know is that Dr. Birnbaum has a secret.
One got the impression that there was a tremendous amount beneath the surface.
And back in New York, that secret is about to come out.
Why didn't he tell us this?
In 1985, Dr. Robert Birnbaum's wife, Gail, disappears. For the next 15 years, he lives with a burning secret.
He's talked to thoroughly by missing persons and other detectives right off the bat. He moves to Las Vegas. He leaves Las Vegas and moves to Minot, North Dakota. When he's out there practicing, nobody's contacting him about this. That at that point, he feels safe, and he feels that this is something that's in his past and something that's not going to come back and haunt him.
But the long arm of the law can have an even longer memory. And in 1999, cold case prosecutors Dan Bibb and Stephen Sirocco reopened the file on Gail Katz Birnbaum. They want to find out if her husband's story holds water.
Can we just talk about this?
There is nothing to talk about.
Dr. Birnbaum told the police that on that Saturday that they had had a fight in their apartment on East 86th Street, that she had left the apartment to go to Central Park and was going to go cool off. She had left the apartment around 11 a.m. and that she never returned.
The doctor says he waits for her in his apartment until 5:30, when he attends a family engagement. But there's something he has conveniently forgotten to mention.
At some point, someone tells one of the investigators that, oh, by the way, did you know Bob's a pilot and that he goes to an airport in New Jersey all the time and flies? And they're lifting their jaw up from the desk saying, why didn't he tell us this?
Why would the doctor conceal that detail? Could his high-altitude hobby somehow be connected with Gail's disappearance?
They went and they began to interview aviation companies out there that lease and rent planes. They asked, do you know Robert Birnbaum? And they said, yes. Can you tell us, did he fly on July 7th, 1985? Let me get the records. Yes, he did fly on July 7th, 1985.
He had taken out a Cessna over the Atlantic Ocean for 2 hours on the day she disappeared.
And he never told anyone about that.
And that's not all Dr. Birnbaum's been keeping under the radar.
There were a number of witnesses that brought us information and brought the police information that Dr. Birnbaum had been violent to Gail in the past. He was a violent anti-smoker, and he caught her smoking out on their balcony. actually strangled her to the point of unconsciousness.
In addition, we had spoken to his therapist. His therapist had written to Gail, warning Gail about her husband.
You had psychiatrists who believed him to be homicidal, who had warned his wife.
When detectives add Dr. Birnbaum's history of violence to his secret 2-hour flight, suddenly they have a theory about where Gail might be. In 2000, 15 years since Gail disappeared, the American public gets their first chance to hear that theory. Dr. Birnbaum stands trial for the murder of his wife. The case against him is entirely circumstantial.
There was nothing forensically that was ever developed in this case. There was never any blood, never any hair samples, never any fingerprints, never any weapon with blood on it, nothing.
And unlike the vast majority of murder cases, there's no body. But what prosecutors do have is a compelling tale of a love story gone terribly wrong.
Yes!
On the day, July 7th, she told him she was going to get a divorce, that she was leaving that day.
I'm leaving you. Get away from me. Stop it!
We know that he can get emotional to the point of violence because she's smoking a cigarette. We anticipate that he can get even more violent and emotionally upset when she's about to divorce him and leave him. He most probably strangled her to death, as he had strangled her before, to the point of unconsciousness. He's stuck here now with his wife's body in the apartment. He's got to get rid of it in some way.
So the doctor turns to the tools of his trade.
We actually called the chief medical examiner, who was able to tell the jury, for a surgeon, it would take a matter of minutes. That it would be just as easy for him to cut up a body as it would be a chef to cut up a chicken.
Prosecutors believe the doctor puts his wife's body in a duffel bag and drives with it to the airport in New Jersey.
Puts the duffel bag in the plane, on the passenger seat probably. Flies for approximately 2 hours, which is enough time to go considerably over the Atlantic Ocean.
And there, the doctor and his wife part company. A relationship that began in the air ends in the air.
She thought that he would be a good husband. Her evaluation of this was wrong. Dead wrong.
According to some, violence was a feature of the Birnbaum's marriage.
Their downstairs neighbor said that the fights were constant. She never testified at trial, but her words were they fought like cats and dogs constantly. And it was every day. Whenever they were home together, they were fighting.
I'm leaving you. Get away from me.
But after the morning of July 7th, 1985, the violent confrontations are heard no more.
The neighbor hears the fight, hears what she describes as pounding of feet on the floor, a loud bang, and silence. And then Gail is never seen again by anyone.
After his wife's disappearance, Dr. Birnbaum dates a series of women and gives them a series of explanations about his wife's fate.
Dr. Birnbaum had had a trail of girlfriends after his wife's disappearance. And to each of those girlfriends, he had told a slightly different version of what had happened to his wife. In one account, she was missing. In another account, she had become ill and died.
A picture began to emerge of Robert Birnbaum telling the same theme to everybody they spoke to. There were variations on that theme. There were substantial variations that wouldn't appear in an otherwise truthful story.
The murder is doubly tragic because it came at the moment Gail Katz-Birnbaum was trying to break away from her abusive marriage.
It seemed to me, after speaking with everybody that was involved in their lives, that she was planning a career without him.
I'm leaving you.
Her mindset that day was that she was going to get her freedom, she was going to get out from under him, and she was going to be able to lead her own life, become a psychologist, and live a life apart from Dr. Birnbaum.
To jurors who might find the theory of what happened to Gail far-fetched, the prosecution has two words: watch this.
The NYPD pilot loaded 110 pounds, which was her weight, of sand in bags onto the plane. The pilot was able to demonstrate that he could dispose of the bag out the passenger door, and he did it another way, that in fact he could take the bag, move it across his lap, and dispose of it out of the pilot's door. It was just crystal clear that this was absolutely possible to do.
On October 24th, 2000, the jury files back into the courtroom. Reporters scramble for a vantage point. Will circumstantial evidence be enough to convict Robert Birnbaum?
You know, we're walking back into the courtroom. I said, you know, I got to tell you, I think this is going to be an acquittal.
Dr. Birnbaum stands up for the verdict, his reputation and liberty on the line.
He was convicted of murder in the second degree, and she gave him 20 years to life. Sometimes circumstantial evidence can be more devastating and compelling than if you have an eyewitness.
In a nosedive no flying ace could recover from, the doctor swabs his surgeon scrubs for a prison jumpsuit. The higher they soar, the harder they crash. Michael Skakel spiraled from spoiled rich kid to killer. And Dr. Robert Birnbaum's healing hands turned deftly to murder. Now, with privileges revoked and murderous desires uncloaked, they're above suspicion no more. Till next time we meet behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.